This is like my seventh take of this story, so I hope this goes better. I apologize if my voice is shaky or if I cry. Enjoy. After a long week of work serving customers nonstop at the diner, she finally had a day of rest. The days have only gotten longer ever since she's been on her own. Every shift is a hassle to go through, as if it were a battle to a never-ending war. Through all the customers, shitty tips, and the truckers who pass by, she still finds peace somehow, going home to whoever or going wherever she can stay for the night. She had the chance to see an old friend who, in between work and struggle, she always made time to see. It had been almost 3 years since they last saw one another. They had decided to meet up for coffee and hotcakes at another diner across town, just like they used to every Friday morning. She decided to wear what he had always admired. She put on this floral dress, flowy and relaxed, not too risque, but not too formal. She had to take the bus down from where she last stayed. It took about an hour, but she couldn't miss this for the world. She looked at her watch as she arrived at the diner. She let out a sigh as she was an hour earlier than expected to be. Her excitement slowly dying as she decided to get a table for two, as she knew they would soon have their rush and less time would be spent with him. She sat in the booth where she shared some of her fondest memories and laughter. She smiled to herself as she reminisced sipping her overly sweet coffee. Just as her memories were fading, she saw the familiar sight of an old beaten Chevy. She looked at her watch once more. He was 20 minutes late, but she forgave him nonetheless. He stepped into the diner and walked straight to the booth she was sitting in. He had seen her from a mile away as they embraced in a hug that never should have ended. Emotions filling their embrace as they both teared up before smiling and letting out a sigh in harmony. A short silence followed as they both sat across from one another, no words being exchanged as none were able to be let out. Their eyes locked onto one another as if it were their first time falling in love. Soon he broke his glance to his mug as the waitress brought him coffee and poured. He let out a sigh. Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. So much has happened since I last saw you. He looked out the window as he tried to find the best way to say what needed to be said. He was always straightforward and harsh with his way of speaking. Daisy now had this feeling of dread as he looked out the window, avoiding her gaze. She always knew when something was wrong or bothering him, or if he had something harsh to say, like a truth or a lie. She always hated that about him, never knowing what was going on and feeling like he was always playing some kind of game. He raised the mug to his lips as the hot coffee made its way through his mustache and dripped onto his beard, as he was clumsy, therefore it was inevitable. They both laughed and smiled at one another as memories once more flooded back quickly and left as soon as they came. She noticed his style, still rugged, yet clean. The dark fitted jeans paired well with his iron flannel, with the hard boots to bring it all together. She looked once more, the feeling of heartbreak filling her filling her eyes with tears as she noticed the ring around his finger. I couldn't wait another 5 years for you, Daisy. You always wanted to live it out and keep me behind as a backup, but I couldn't torture myself for another minute. His eyes now filled with tears as he kept looking out the window, his arms crossed to be calm, hiding his true emotions. I was always waiting and waiting for you, but you were never ready for me. You forgot I was here, and you forgot the memories we shared and moved on too quick. Couldn't be on the sidelines forever, you know. A tear falling down his cheek. Oh God. A tear falling down his cheek, he cleared his throat to cover the shakiness of his voice. I couldn't do this to myself any longer. I waited and waited for you, and you were never ready. I'm supposed to get married next month to a girl I met in Tennessee. A long pause filled the diner as they both couldn't find the words to let out once more. Daisy. Daisy, now looking down, realizing the time that had passed and the hesitation of and holding off that she had been doing, finally caught up to her. From her sadness, she felt a fire of anger and passion. She looked at him, although he didn't return her gaze. You always had been a liar, Beau. You never wanted to tell me what was going on with you. You always hesitated with yourself, and you let me slip away when I needed to be held. She felt the tears falling, but she didn't care. The emotions couldn't stop her anymore. I always wanted to love you, and you never let me. And you never let me. I wanted to be there, and we never saw eye to eye, but I loved you, and always have. Why'd you even waste your time coming here? She asked, almost breaking down into tears. He let out a sigh as he drew his breath to relax. I didn't want you to worry, to care. I wanted you to have your life. I couldn't control what you did, and I sure as hell can't now. I don't trust much of anyone anymore. If I wanted to waste my time, then I'd be back in Tennessee. There was a heavy silence in the air, as the diner seemed to have understood what was happening and left them be. Beau had let the tears flow down silently as he had always done, just like his father had taught him. Daisy, wiping his tears away and rubbing her thumb across his cheek to console him, went against any boundary they may have had. He didn't pull away from her. She didn't pull away from him. He found himself comforted by her touch. A warm rush ran through his body as he let out another sigh. Daisy now let go as he tensed back up. She couldn't find what more to say. Had she scared him? Had she angered him? What was he thinking? He looked out the window as if looking into the future he once always wanted. He smiled softly as he thought about it, and for once decided to be honest. I've thought about you every day for years and years. I've always tried to replace you. Hell, even my fiancée loves the things you do. She loves coffee and taking her time at the store. She laughs at all my jokes, and she's everything I could ever ask for. Daisy, shocked, didn't know what to say or think. Her panic stayed, but she knew he had more to say. Another long pause. There was another long pause as they both held their tongue. Beau had taken a deep breath and another sip of his coffee before finishing what he had to say. There's just one thing wrong. He shook his head as he bit his lip to stop himself from crying, focusing on giving himself pain as his hand gripped his shoulder, almost making him wince. But she just isn't you. All time had stopped as she finally felt the honesty he had always kept from her. Beau, now coming to terms with his feelings, felt the stress of years slowly flow away. They both let out all the emotions hidden away, and she was finally ready to start a new life and settle. She was finally ready to be honest and accept the truth. He smiled as he finally looked at her. I'm in town for a few more days visiting my old home. I'm sure you remember Granddad's ranch. She nodded and smiled as she relaxed. The coffee tastes better there. Why don't I make you a fresh pot? I can stop by the corner market and buy you some of those donuts you love. He chuckled as his cheeks ran warm with a blush. They both had laughed and smiled as the emotions and tones in the air had become complex but hopeful. He wiped his eyes as he looked at her. For the special little sprinkles you like. Their eyes locked as he slowly slid off his ring and left it on the table. Fucking savage. Okay, back to the story. He got up and invited her to do so as well. He wrapped his flannel around her as they made their way to his truck. Daisy looked out the window as they passed the trees and the fields. She couldn't help but smile. Oh my god. She couldn't help but smile as things had finally come full circle, and they had gotten together just as they wanted, just as they hoped, and just how they dreamed. Now she smiles at the thought of it, but that was 20 years ago. She turned to look at Beau rocking back and forth in his chair, holding her hand and smoking a cigar, looking into their field from the comfort of their porch. The smell of dew from the weeping willows mixing with the sweet scent of his tobacco and her calming perfume. His hand felt warm, her heart at ease. No longer did they have any dreams to dream, for they were living it. For they were living in the only one they ever had. And that's the story. Oh my god, that was 10 minutes. Um, yeah, there's alternate endings to that, but basically to cover some shit up, yeah, he definitely left his fiance. Yeah, so there's that. And that was the whole goddamn story. I don't even know if I could upload this to Instagram, but we'll see. Thank you guys, whoever listened.